Some people come with things like, well, if we would let them in peace and, we always invade them and we always invaded them. And, what about the Crusades? What about the Crusades? But when you go further into it, you can see here that the early spread of Islam was totally aggressive. Islam spread over all these huge regions.
Because I know somewhere deep down in my heart, I still love you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome back to another episode of the Islamic podcast. So today we're back with Mr. Accuses once again. So this is the 17th reason as to why he left Islam that I'm going to be discussing and refuting. So in case you guys don't know, I've been going through all of the list of why Apostate Prophet left Islam. So far I'm done with like 16 or 17 of them. So I think it's either 17 or 18. So yeah, let's take a look at as to the 17th reason as to why he left Islam, and then I'll make my comment.
18. How nations converted to Islam and how Islam spread. When you grow up a Muslim, you always learn about how courageous and how brave and awesome the Muslim warriors were, and the warriors of Muhammad and those after them. Well, what exactly were they fighting against? I mean, they were fighting at some point against the Arab polytheists. Okay. But there's something else behind that. I mean, if you grow up a Muslim, you never think about how your nation even became Muslim. But when you go further into it, you can see here that the early spread of Islam was totally aggressive. Islam spread over all these huge regions, not by just talking to people. It spread by the sword. There were nations here already, and they were subdued. Many in India, those proud Pakistanis whom we see today, who sent me death threats and insults. Those were converted to Islam by force. India was invaded for centuries by Muslims. Turks, for example, converted to Islam due to political reasons, out of fear, because they were desperate in their region. Thanks to Islam, they became prosperous and strong again.
Here he's committing the non-secular fallacy. I mean, just because, even if this is true, which is not, just because something is spread by the sword doesn't necessarily mean it's false, okay? For example, think about this thought experiment, right? Imagine you, Ridwan, are a president of a country, right? Let's call this the Accuses land, right? And in Accuses land, you're all about science and progress, right? But then you realize on the country next to you, you have this bunch of people who do not believe in science, who do not use modern medicine, who force their kids to not take medicine, and all this other kind of nonsense, right? And you see this and you think to yourself, how barbaric, look at this. And these people don't even respect basic human rights. They don't use technology. They are letting their kids die, right? Horrible, right? So at one point you see that some of these people are suffering and all that. And what do? You go and you conquer this other country, right? Let's call this Abdullah Samir land, right? So you go to Abdullah Samir land and you conquer them. And then, after you conquer them, you establish schools, you make sure that people are educated on scientific method, you make sure that people learn about math and all this other kind of stuff. And you teach people about the Big Bang Theory at school, right? You teach them at school. Now, will the fact that you invaded another country and spread the the scientific theory of Big Bang make the theory of Big Bang false? No. As a matter of fact, whether the theory of Big Bang is true or false has nothing to do with the fact that you spread that idea aggressively. Okay? So whether an idea is true or false has nothing to do with how it's spread, right? It has to do with the idea itself. So if you want to refute an idea, then you have to refute it by its own merit. Yeah, this is just a non-sequitur fallacy and a very stupid point. Yeah, and also another thing, like what about the COVID restrictions, right? I mean, COVID restrictions are forced on people who don't believe in COVID-19, right? I mean, does that mean that COVID-19 doesn't exist, therefore it's false? No, I mean, just because it's forced on people doesn't necessarily mean it's false. Same way, just because something is not forced on people doesn't mean it's true either. For example, there are many weird conspiracy theories out there. Some people believe that Tupac is still alive. Does it mean Tupac is still alive? No.
Okay. I just want to ask myself, is life worth living? Should I blast myself?
I don't know.
So this is just a stupid point he made. Also, then he said that Pakistanis were like forcefully converted into Islam, which is absolutely false because there is no forced conversion in Islam. And I know he knows this because there's no way he doesn't know this. So this is the funny thing with Islamophobes, right? So they will say this like things like very nonchalantly, and they'll act as if like somehow Islam allows forced conversion, but the moment you call them out on it, they're gonna say, well, that's not what I mean. I'm just talking about how nations convert, blah blah blah, right? But here he clearly said that how Pakistanis were forced to convert to Islam.
Those proud Pakistanis whom we see today, who sent me death threats and insults, those were converted to Islam by force.
Well, in reality, that's not true. For example, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, there shall be no compulsion in acceptance of religion. The right course has become distinct from the wrong. So whoever disbelieves in Taghut and believes in Allah has grasped the most trustworthy handhold with no breaks in it. And Allah is hearing and knowing. You can read about this in Quran 2256. Ibn Kathir said, there is no compulsion in religion, meaning do not force anyone to become Muslim, for Islam is plain and clear, and its proofs and evidence are plain and clear. Therefore, there is no need to force anyone to embrace Islam. Forceful conversion is not allowed in Islam. Okay, so you can make this stupid point that somehow Islam allows force. It doesn't. Even if you can find some weird occurrence of like forced conversion, and if it ever happened in history, then it's wrong. It's not what Islam teaches. But I'm sure he's gonna deny this and be like, but I didn't say this, blah blah blah. But he clearly said another thing that I just want to quickly point out before I end the video, which is that he's also committing the special pleading fallacy, right? So if he's like trying to make this kind of like a moral kind of argument, then that doesn't work either, because all system of government was spread by the sword. Well, I mean, what's system of government that deals with geopolitics doesn't spread by the sword? I mean, do you not know how the British Empire spread? Or do you not know how the communist Russia spread? Do you not know the history of the world? Every empire, like every system of government that has a strong identity, spread by the sword. That's just how it is. Like, so why is it that when Islam does it, that is somehow wrong? I mean, if Islam is true, then what the early caliphs did is actually just, it's moral, right? Because they're calling people to the truth. They're trying to save people from the hellfire. So why is that bad? Exactly. So why are you taking a special interest in Islamic government and Islamic system of government and saying that somehow that's evil? But in reality, your own country spread by the sword. I mean, your own country was established by the sword. Was it not? I mean, was America not involved in taking out a bunch of Native American tribes? Did you guys not get rid of most of the tribes there? But the point here is that if you have a strong kind of like political system and you see from that worldviews that something is being done in another place that is wrong, of course you will try to subdue that by using force. Or if not, if you can use force, then you're going to use diplomatic means, right? You're going to sanction that way. For example, imagine this little nugget from history, right? In the Roman society, they actually had a punishment where the patriarch or the male head of the family could actually kill anyone in the family if he thought they did something wrong. Okay, this is the practice that the Romans had. For example, in an article by Shushma Malik, who is a Roman historian, and Callian Denford said the following. Roman society was fundamentally hierarchical and patriarchal. A Roman Peter familia, the family's oldest living male, had, in theory, the power to kill someone within his household with impunity. This included not only those physically living under his roof, but the wider family of brothers, sister, niece, and nephew as well. However, historians have debated whether the power may have been largely symbolic and little used in practice. Philippe Karla-Uvac has argued that the power did exist, but didn't give heads of the household carte blanche to act as they pleased. For example, the senator Quintus Fabius Maximus Euberius is said to have killed his son for his dubious chastity, but punishing a crime of sexual nature was not seen as the proper use of a father's power. So Quintus himself was tried and exiled. Right? Now, to be fair, these type of rulings were not very common, but they were used, and in theory, people, especially male family members, could do this. So this is basically like honor killing. So, but in Islam, there's no concept of something like honor killing, right? Islam is actually against this. For example, in an article on honor killing in Islam QA, they said the following: killing a Muslim unlawfully is a serious matter and a grave crime. Allah says in the Quran of meaning, and whoever kills a believer intentionally, his recompense is hell to abide therein, and the wrath and the curse of Allah are upon him, and a great punishment is prepared for him. Remember, this is Surah Nisa 493. Bukhari, Ibn Umar said that Prophet ﷺ said, the believer will continue to be encompassed by the mercy of Allah so long as he does not shed blood that is forbidden to shed. Right? Abu Hurairah reported that Sa'd ibn Ubaidah said, Messenger of Allah, if I were to find my wife with a man, should I not touch him before bringing 4 witnesses? Allah's Prophet said, yes. He said, by no means, by him who has sent you with the truth, I would hasten with my sword to him before that. Allah's Messenger said, listen to what your chief says. He is jealous of his honor. I am more jealous than he, and God is more jealous than I. This is a Muslim, quote 1498. So from this, we can see that the Romans had many practices that could be considered as barbaric, or that could be considered as cruel from an Islamic point of view, right? And the Prophet, what he said in the Hadith is that you should listen to your chief, meaning only the leader of the country or the judge can decide who, whether a person is guilty or not. A family member cannot do that, right? So here, Islam is clearly codifying a system of government where the government gets to decide through trial whether someone is innocent or not, right? Through the judicial system. However, in the Roman law, vigilance justice was just common. Anyone, the head of the family, could just kill you or sell you into slavery, which is absolutely barbaric. But anyway, the point is, from an Islamic point of view, if you look at this type of laws, and then you can clearly see that you can have a moral objection to these things, right? Now, if a Muslim king or Muslim ruler sees this type of things and thinks that this is barbaric, then shouldn't he have the right to go and stop this type of barbaric practices? In Islam, if you're conquered, you get rights. So from a historical point of view, where you had no concept of things like nation states, obviously a Muslim ruler had the right to wage war if he sees that something is going wrong, or if he sees that there's a need for it, right? For example, unless the enemies are a lot stronger, in that case, he can't do anything. But if you have a situation where the enemy is doing something clearly wrong, and you have a way to spread the truth, or spread Islam, and right some wrongs that is happening in their society, then then what's wrong with that? Why is that wrong? But that doesn't mean that we always go around conquering other places. No, because we have the concept of making peace. We don't just go out and just kill people. First, we exchange, we talk, right? And you need to understand that Islam is a system of government, and it's a very practical system of government that is very just. And that gives you multiple options, which is that if you embrace Islam, if you don't, then pay the tax. I mean, do you really expect that if Islam is true, this Muslim ruler will just allow I mean, what kind of person would just allow other people to just burn in hellfire, right? So of course he will try to spread Islam. He will try to, make sure that people don't end up in hellfire, right? And in order to stop people from going to hellfire, he's gonna do everything he can. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially in a situation where you don't have this concept of United Nations or this concept of treaties between nations, right? So if a ruler decides to invade another country and conquer it, then yeah, what's wrong with that? Like that's not evil, because you guys do the same thing. You guys also conquer and take over countries because you disagree with us, right? But regardless, I'm sure this will just go beyond his head. And you got destroyed by Brother Daniel on these points, so there's really no point in talking to you regarding this. And if you guys like the video, then like, share, subscribe. And if you like my content, then you can support me by becoming a patron or by becoming a member. And yeah, with someone in this video, thank you guys for watching. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.